and things unforeseen that we probably didn't even think of that's going to take place. So let's tighten up the reins, and I hope we can get some answers to those questions. And that's all, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other honorable member wish to make a contribution? None? Premier?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Are you going to start a clock for me? I'll do my best not to take 30 minutes.
I know you ain't going to use your 30 minutes.
Oh, we'll see, but it's too late. All right. So, Mr. Speaker, as I started during my intervention, it is clear to, I think, everyone in the country that I have a declarable interest on this particular matter. As my register of interest says, I am a shareholder of Hitch Limited. And as I have said, since I've been in office, I have not taken an active role, resigned my director positions, and I'm not involved with the day-to-day activities or anything else regarding that. Now, here's the thing, Mr. Speaker. Sorry? The sad reality of the public debate around this is that this debate is more about what has taken place or what I did as a private citizen before I came to office, and not about the policy or the problem that we are trying to solve. I will say it again. The sad reality of the public debate around this particular issue is more around the interests of which I just declared than the policy of which we are trying to debate. The public debate, not the one in here.
Let me just make it clear from here. You stressed the public debate, not the debate here tonight.
Not the one in here, no.
Okay,
the public debate.
Long to clear that.
Yes,
okay.
Not the one in here.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
It has not been about the stranded residents and tourists. It has not been about the fact that we have an issue in this country providing transportation to tourists and residents during peak times in our holiday season. That is a reality and a fact. And with the greatest respect to the opposition, none of the solutions of which they have proposed will work to fix that problem. We all know the difficulty. I'll get to your points later. We all know the difficulty of trying to tell someone who owns a vehicle that you must hire someone else. The honorable member just took a seat, said he sold his taxi because he can't find people to find someone else to drive something. And then when they get in an accident, then the taxi's off the road and all the rest. We know the difficulties there. So let's just park that to the side, because the reality is that the job of a government is to solve problems. I remember an interview that I did a few years ago, and I said that if I didn't, with my friends, decide to launch an app in 2015, this rideshare problem would have long fix. Again, the public debate focuses on the wrong issues. It doesn't focus on the policy and the problem that we are trying to solve. As a tourism destination, we cannot be a place where people cannot get from A to B. We cannot be a jurisdiction where we have persons who we invite to our country to work and all the rest, expect certain things and can't get to dinner, all the rest. We have all heard the stories. I have told the stories where I will go to an event, I will see someone, and I will see people with that look on their face at the hotel door. And I know exactly what that look is. That look is they had dinner reservations they can't get. I remember one time I went to a hotel and I told my driver, take them to where they are going, please, so they can get to their dinner. The reason why I made that decision in 2015, Mr. Speaker, when I made the decision in 2015, Mr. Speaker, is I remember I was staying in the constituency 32, the honorable member Scott Simmons. I was having a honeymoon weekend, not a honeymoon weekend, anniversary weekend with my wife at Green's Guest House. We went to Cambridge Beaches. Guess what? Couldn't get back for our post-honeymoon or post-dinner anniversary activities. Couldn't get back. Yes, couldn't get back. Stuck and stranded. Ruined my plans.
Be careful now.
But this is the reality, Mr. Speaker. This is faced by people throughout this country. And the question is, what are you going to do about it? Now, I understand that there's politics at play here. I understand that it is a safe move to say, let's say oppose. But what is the plan to fix? And I'm sorry, Leader of the Opposition.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
The honorable member is misleading the House. He's saying that oppose. This is not about opposing. This, as I've already said, is about putting good legislation forward. If we cannot get on our feet, and we have made I just stood up and made some suggestions. And for the Premier to get on his feet to say that we haven't made any suggestions is foolhardy at best. It's foolhardy.
Mr. Speaker, with the greatest of respect to the Honorable former Premier, that's not what I said. I was addressing the opposition leader. I said, I'll get to your questions in a little bit. Just calm down. And I'm sure the minister will do that. Just listen for a bit, Craig. So here we go. No. There's a political dimension to this. We're all politicians here. We get it. We recognize. We understand it.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
The Premier is suggesting that we are playing politics with a bill.
I absolutely am.
Yes, and he is exercising the very delusion that his honorable member spoke of earlier.
Okay.
We are here for good legislation, so let's stay on that line and length.
Haven't even started talking about the legislation yet, Mr. Speaker.
Just continue on the vein.
I'm good. I'm good, Mr. Speaker. So here we go, Mr. Speaker. So here we go, Mr. Speaker. Let's be clear what we are talking about. Because the honorable members on that side kept making references to Uber, and the first two speakers on that side. We are not talking about Uber, which is...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Premier is misleading the House. No one all evening has mentioned UBER.
Mr. Speaker, it is clear they are not listening to their own members when their own members speak. And it is clear that I have struck a nerve. So let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to talk about this. We are not talking about Uber, which is unregulated, as some people have said. A key point and a key difference. We are talking about supplementing the existing taxi service to assist in providing additional lift during peak times. That is what we are talking about. We have unregulated situations and we have regulated situations. And that is what we are talking about with this particular piece of legislation. And Mr. Speaker, it is important to make the distinction, because the public debate will focus on things like Uber, like what's it called, and the impacts of what it has had in other jurisdictions, which is the exact opposite of what we are trying to happen here. The thought that a government would bring forward legislation to decimate an industry that so many of our constituents and so many of our families and so many people rely on is a nonsense. It is a nonsense. But it is easy for headlines for those who may want to rally persons and feelings around this. We all know what happened in the run-up to the by-election before the honorable opposition leader won his seat back. You know, we were talking about rideshare, and they got everyone out all ready to go. We get it. It's politics. The same thing that we did when we were in opposition, and the honorable member who was the Minister of Transport bought a mini car bill. We got it. But let's talk about how we fix the problem. And the problem is that there is not enough transportation during peak times during our summer season. We all know that, and we can all accept that. And so, Mr. Speaker, that is why I've said the statements that I've said about the industry's decimation ring hollow. And that is why the statement also about lack of consultation rings hollow. Because this has been going on since this honorable member was a minister, since the whip was a minister, since Lawrence was a minister. It has been going on for a while. There have been numerous statements on this, and it has continued to evolve to try to strike the right balance. to try to get there. When this was first announced, the criticisms and complaints were correct because it was never the policy of the government to ensure that taxis were given first preference and rideshare was only given if an opportunity, if taxis did not respond. That was not what happened when it first announced. So it is important to recognize that through the consultative process and the meetings, we have come up with something that we think strikes that balance, Mr. Speaker, and that in of itself is important. So MP Jamal Simmons said it best when he says taxi first, rideshare when needed, and others have made the point, such as the Deputy Premier and the Minister. If taxis are there really and willing to pick people up, then rideshare will never take off. It will never take off. But this, Mr. Speaker, is the challenge that we have. We know it is the case. And so we want to support our existing industries, but we want to fix those problems. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to give you a little bit of history. Because there is no worse feeling, at least for me. It was pretty bad. And I will share, some people may have heard it if they listen on the radio, and I'll take a little bit of time. I will share, Mr. Speaker, what happened the first time I use Uber. It's a story. Because for people who went to school in Washington, D.C. or other places like New York, they will know how hard it was for a black man to get a taxi. And I remember the indignity of myself in university having to find the nearest white person to ask them to hail a taxi for me because I needed to get to where I was going. And that is the reality of many stories of persons. Now, this doesn't have much to do with this debate, but I'm setting a context here, Mr. Speaker. Because I remember in 2010, when I had gone to DC on a trip, and I was trying to get to a meeting, and I messaged the person who I was going to a meeting with, and I says, I'm sorry, I'm late. I forgot what it was like being back in DC. I'm on the side of the road. I can't get a taxi. Because the black man will have the taxis drive by them. It's the same thing. Same thing in New York. We know the stories. That's not what this debate is about. And I remember that this person wrote back to me. And back then I had a BlackBerry, didn't have an iPhone, all the rest. And he said, yes, BlackBerries. And he said, oh, well, why are you waiting for a taxi? Just text this message and it's this service called Uber and a taxi will come. And I'm like, what do you mean? And I remember texting that message. And then all of a sudden, I get this text message back that says, oh, your taxi will be there in X, Y, and Z. I was sort of saying unparliamentary language, Mr. Speaker, because I was flabbergasted. I was like, this is incredible. So you mean to tell me that I no longer have to go through indignity of doing this thing, trying to find the closest white person to me to hail a taxi so I don't miss my meeting? Hold a second. This is the reality. I'm explaining to you what many people had to live through. But here's the thing, Mr. Speaker. Here is the thing, Mr. Speaker. I give you that point because I'm making the point around what happens when markets don't function. When markets don't function, okay? So innovation happens, Mr. Speaker, then markets don't function when things are not supposed to work the way that they are. The reason why medallions in Washington, D.C. and in New York City are worthless is because an unregulated mousetrap came in that did it better than what was happening, undercut them, and took their business. And they weren't working well, Mr. Speaker. That's the fact. When I have to find a white person to hail a taxi for me, it means the market's not working well. And trust and believe, there are many other persons like that who had that indignity and said, you know what? They've built something, we're going to do this and all the rest. And that is the reason why we're here. But here's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker. It existed because it fixed the problem. And here's the reality. The taxi industry in this country, Mr. Speaker, is lucky that we are so small. No, I'm being real. Let's say if we're going to have a debate, then let's have a debate. Because I see the honorable members out there trying to be churlish, but I'm having a debate about an issue that I know about. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, we're lucky that we are so small. Because if we were a larger jurisdiction, a tourist jurisdiction, it would have been here a long time undercutting this market. And we would have a very difficult time trying to regulate it out, as happened in many different places. And so here's the thing, Mr. Speaker, and this is important. It may not be that way forever. It may not be that way forever. The way that technology is going and AI is going, different things like that, people may be able to deploy these solutions in various countries and various things much faster than the regular things of which we try to keep up with people will matter. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we deal with this from a regulated standpoint. There is no undercutting the market here, because to answer the question the honorable member raised, it is the same rate. So we're not dealing with persons undercutting the market. An important point. It is ours, and yes, it is seasonal, as has been announced and stated on multiple times in the papers that have been put forward.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
I believe the honorable member is misleading Bermuda as a whole and this House. He's speaking as if the industry is going to be regulated with this ride sharing. We're not regulating the industry at all right now. That's why we're in this position. We're not doing anything with taxi drivers not being on the road for 16 hours and the likes. We're not regulating. We got gypsy cabs up and down Bermuda. We're not regulating anything. That's why we're in the position that we're in. We need real regulation, enforcement, and it's not happening. And it's not going to happen under rideshare if we're not already doing it.
Premier.
I see the honorable member is excited. Clearly not a point of order, but that's all right. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me continue, because the honorable member is making a difference in distinction between regulation and enforcement of existing regulation. He points to one particular issue that may not be enforced, but there are many taxi drivers who will tell you that there's enforcement that takes place on many of the various matters that are in significant things, the minibuses and all the rest. But he can have his opinion. That is fine. And I think that we've heard from members, and we've also heard from myself on the issue of the 16 hours. Because there are some points that are made from the opposition, that if the thing cannot be on the books, then you should take it off the books, because it's a very difficult thing to do. But let's not talk about the 16 hours that get stuck there, Mr. Speaker, because on the matter related to regulation, that means that there is a regulation market. And what the legislation sets out is a regulated market. Our taxi industry is a regulated market. We can talk about enforcement, but it is a regulated market. When you don't have regulation, it is unregulated, which is what you have in many jurisdictions with Uber or Lyft or other particular services, Mr. Speaker. Now, let me continue. As I said, Mr. Speaker, I guess I can say I'm probably the only person in this honorable House who has built a ride-hailing app. And so I can speak to this in a matter of which makes sense. I think it's important to address the honorable member's concerns and other concerns from persons, Mr. Speaker, is that tech can enforce. Code can enforce rules. You can audit code. It is built in via code. As the minister has said, when I talk about code, I'm talking about the code that is built into ride-sharing platforms, whichever it is. The legislation, as set out, or the regulations which are coming forward, or which the minister has spoken about, or if he has not, he will speak inside of his closing, speak about the fact that, as has been said widely, taxis get dispatched first. The only place where rideshare is used is via an app. And if the taxis on those particular platforms do not answer, then a ride-sharing vehicle is done. Whether it is what we do, Mr. Speaker, or whether it is what anyone else does, the reality is that it is via an app. I want us to understand that. You can audit code, Mr. Speaker. The TCD can see whether or not the people are actually following the regulations. And it does not require manual human intervention to do that. That's technology. That is what we are trying to do, Mr. Speaker, deal with matters related to technology. So yes, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that I support this because we need to advance. And what I want to do before I close is to thank all of the members of this government who have worked with, who've spoken, who have contributed, because this has gone through a lot of iterations in caucus, Mr. Speaker. It has not been an easy ride to get it to this place, Mr. Speaker, because it's a difficult issue. But we are trying to advance in a limited fashion, in a balanced form, where we believe that we can protect the interests of the taxi industry while also providing additional economic options and additional options for our visitors in a busy tourism season that we're expecting and in the future to go ahead and make it happen. When markets happen, when markets work, we can do better. And what we are trying to do here through this is to make sure that there are more and better options for our tourists and residents during peak time. And of course, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to support this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Premier. Any other member wish to speak? None other? Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know as the hour is late, I want to start by thanking all members of this honorable House for the very robust debate that we have had over a very, very important issue, and that is transportation in this country. And Mr. Speaker, what I have heard before I get into my closing remarks is 3 key points that have gone throughout this debate. And the first one, which started at the beginning, was the honorable members from the other side continuously asking about data. And the way that the legislation is currently set up with dispatch companies is they are required to submit data to the Transport Control Department. And they are required to report it accurately. And as I was going through that data, Mr. Speaker, some of my colleagues have quoted some of this data, and I know, Mr. Speaker, you asked, where did that data come from? It comes directly from the active dispatch companies that are reporting to the Transport Control Department. And I want to put some of these stats in context. That the data that comes is that there are fluctuations through operator availability throughout the week. And the data, the dispatch data that has been given to TCD shows that the highest percentage throughout the week of taxis on the road is 68%. 68% on Tuesday. Sorry, let me start at Monday, 64%. Wednesdays, 64%. Thursdays, 62%. 61% on Fridays. 55% on Saturdays, and 58% on Sundays. At 7 a.m., Mr. Speaker, some of the data shows that only 24% availability of taxis on the road. We heard earlier, the average wait time for pickup is 37 minutes. And that was data from 2025. And the most shocking stat that you've heard this evening, and I'll reiterate it, Mr. Speaker, is that there are, at times in 2025, 80,000, to be exact, it was 82,284 unanswered ride requests. And you may say, well, that sounds ridiculous. I'm not saying that's people, but I have an example of a time it was cop match and I was at a barbecue. And I had a good time all of cop match day. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that my group called over and over and over to try to get a vehicle. So, Mr. Speaker, while the honorable members from the other side will say that there is no data, it does exist, and we can pour through it. And I'm sure, as the chairman of the Public Service Vehicle Licensing Board has said, his committee will be looking at that data even further. The second topic that we've heard quite a bit about this evening, Mr. Speaker, is enforcement. And while I'm not going to try to gaslight anyone in this house this evening, I must if I may, speak of an email that I got on April 8th, 2025, Mr. Speaker. It was from a One Bermuda Alliance senator at the time. An email came into the acting Director of Transport Control Department. And I won't bore you with the full details of this, but essentially, this One Bermuda Alliance senator was questioning why would TCD disrupt the flow of traffic in Dockyard to enforce taxi regulations. Why would we do such a thing, Mr. Speaker?
Say it again.
An email, which included, it was sent to the honorable member who sits across the aisle, was included in this correspondence. Questioning the Transport Control Department enforcement officers who, Mr. Speaker, were doing their job. And what better time to enforce the transport...
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
The honorable minister is probably intentionally misleading the House. This wasn't a question from that honorable senator about the enforcement being an issue. The issue was that the enforcement was planned at a time that inconvenienced tourists. It wasn't an email complaining about enforcement. And I have to speak up, Mr. Speaker, because it's being framed as though it was a complaint about enforcement, when it was simply complaint about timing, and it was also some offers made about how that could be done better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I think the point remains. We just went through we are in the midst of a 4-hour debate, Mr. Speaker, where the word enforcement has come up so often, no context was put around it. But I just bring this up, Mr. Speaker, that when enforcement is attempted to be made, there is no right time for enforcement. I guess he wants me, sorry, not he, the honorable member would prefer that we do enforcement in February in Dockyard when there are no taxi drivers there. Or no cruise ships. So, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to belabor that point, but I make it to say that enforcement is happening. It will continue to happen. I cannot tell you to look at the faces of public officers who have to take the abuse when they try to enforce traffic laws in this country. There are stories that people march to Transport Control Department, threaten enforcement officers because they are simply trying to enforce the laws of this country. They asked a question, the honorable members from the other side. Have we ever taken anyone's permit? In September 16, 2025, the Public Service Vehicle Licensing Board canceled a permit for 12 months, ending in September 30th, 2026, following a numerous amount of written complaints. Mr. Speaker, I would say that is enforcement. Mr. Speaker, in July 15th, 2025, under this minister's watch, the initial public service vehicle license application of an individual was denied due to criminal convictions under sections 82(1)(a) and 82(2) of the Act. That is enforcement on the front end, Mr. Speaker. Two more. In August 3rd, and this was not under my watch, but it's been happening for a while, of 2021, the Public Service Vehicle License Board was canceled a taxi permit following several written complaints. And another one where taxi drivers were given warnings. I'm not going to go through all these, but from 2019 to present, I have a list, Mr. Speaker. 4 taxis were ticketed for operating without a valid license. 1 was ticketed for being uninsured. 25 tickets were issued for no driver's license. 12 tickets failing to insure a badge. So on and so on, the list goes, Mr. Speaker. So I reject the assertion from the honorable members from the other side that there is little to no enforcement. And Mr. Speaker, the third point that I've heard throughout this debate from the other side is where the stakeholders consulted. And Mr. Speaker, while it's a cute argument to make from the other side that their friends or the individuals that like to email them regularly will say, oh, the minister hasn't consulted or he doesn't. Mr. Speaker, I go to work every single day to serve the people of this country, not just to serve one segment of this country. So while, Mr. Speaker, we've all seen the emails, and that's what people do when they're trying to lobby. They get your attention. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to say that these wonderful public officers, some of whom are here this evening, have taken the direction of myself, the direction of my cabinet colleagues, the direction of this progressive Labour Party government who put service first, Mr. Speaker. And I've seen it. The stakeholders that they've met with, the Bermuda Hotel Association, the Bermuda Chamber of Commerce. I personally met with them again as recently as yesterday morning. The Bermuda Tourism Authority, the Bermuda Police Service, the Bermuda Public Service Vehicle Licensing Board, insurance companies, dispatch companies, one of which was actually their own, that was recently approved as a dispatch company. Skyport Limited, Mr. Speaker, Redco, the municipal corporations, cruise line representatives, the Road Safety Council, and CARTA. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is an extensive list of stakeholders. Now, while my honorable members from the other side may like to make a meal of one particular organization that has, I'm told, 160 members, the biggest outreach that this ministry has made was sending direct mailers to the nearly 3,000 holders of a public service vehicle license and explaining to them exactly what this legislation was trying to solve. And at the very top, it said taxis first. And then it went down, Mr. Speaker, step by step as to the problem that we are trying to solve and how this would benefit Bermudians and how it would not disenfranchise the taxi industry. So, Mr. Speaker, while my honorable members from the other side would like to say that there has been no consultation, that is absolutely false. Last thing when I get to stakeholders, Mr.
Point
Speaker.
of order, Mr. Speaker. The minister is misleading the House. There was never a statement that there was no consultation. The statement was that the taxi drivers have stated there was no consultation with them, and he can solve that with them. So he needs to be accurate in what he's saying. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, and I will bring this to a close because the importance here is that where I was going with that, there are more stakeholders and more drivers than just one particular organization. My history with the taxi industry goes back many years, family history and the like. The beauty of getting up and down this country, the beauty of the ministries that I have, forces me. It requires me to go up and down the community, into community clubs, sporting events, cultural events, tourism events, is that you get to speak to people organically. Mr. Frost, I'll call his name, been in the industry for a long time. I saw him today and said, Mr. Frost, I'm sure I'm not your favorite person right now. He says, young man, you are doing an excellent job. And keep on keeping on. Younger drivers, I wake up in the morning and say, Darryl, I need to talk to you. And you're doing the right thing. I got up very early this morning to speak directly to the people, Mr. Speaker. That is consultation and that is stakeholders. But Mr. Speaker, I'm going to finish here and talk about a group of individuals that I haven't heard being discussed much this evening. And that is the Ms. Jones and Ms. Smith that we did hear in a previous debate from the opposition. These are the individuals that we all represent, Mr. Speaker. Some of my colleagues have mentioned them. These are the individuals that may live up on Glebe Road and struggle, Mr. Speaker, to get down the hill to Parsons Road to wash their laundry. These are the individuals, Mr. Speaker, who live on Palmetto Road that struggle to get to Hamilton Princess at 6 a.m. to work in the hospitality industry to service our guests, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what we haven't heard about is Ms. Jones, who leaves St. George's on a Friday night to go into Hamilton to have a party with her friend. It is pouring rain, Mr. Speaker. The car unfortunately breaks down on Victoria Street. You might think, well, they're in town. That's easy. Mr. Speaker, in the pouring rain, you would think you pull out your phone, you call for a taxi. When Ms. Jones and her friends cannot get to their party on Front Street because they cannot get a taxi to pick them up on Victoria Street, Mr. Speaker, we have a problem. And Mr. Speaker, this rideshare legislation that we are bringing this morning, while it may not fix every single issue of which the opposition has raised tonight, I think everyone is in broad agreement that transportation availability in this country is a massive problem. We've heard examples of long wait times. We've heard of challenges in the airport. And we've heard of gaps in this system that we are addressing with this legislation. Enforcement, as I said, is very important. And we will continue to enforce transportation. You heard earlier from the chair of the Public Service Licensing Board. I have been very stern with where we are going and what the expectations are. And this framework will introduce stronger accountability. Questions from the other side talked about credit cards. You can only use credit cards through the app for this legislation. We will continue to strengthen our relationship with the taxi industry. We will continue to engage with taxi operators, dispatchers, and all members of the sector. And ultimately, Mr. Speaker, this legislation seeks to address a real and long-standing issue. And we are ensuring that when it's all said and done, the resident and the visitor needs regarding transportation in Bermuda will improve, and this rideshare app is a reliable way of which to do so. With that, Mr. Speaker,
Take it to committee.
I move that the bill be committed.
Thank you. Deputy?
Good evening, members. We are now in Committee of the Whole on the bill entitled the Motor Car Ride Sharing Amendment Act 2026. I call on the minister responsible. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, I'd like to move all of the clauses all at once.
Very good.
Clauses 1 through 8.
It has been moved that we consider all clauses 1 through 8. Are there any objections? There are none. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clause 1 provides the citation for the bill. Clause 2 amends Section 2 of the Act, interpretation, construction, and saving to amend the definition of public service vehicle and insert new definitions. Clause 3 amends Section 28 of the Act, establishment of the Public Service Vehicle Licensing Board, to expand the powers and duties to be discharged by the Public Service Vehicle Licensing Board to include the determination of applicants for ride-sharing permits, the inspection of vehicles proposed for use and used as ride-sharing vehicles, the granting, refusing, suspending, and revoking of ride-share permits. Clause 4 inserts the following new sections into the Act. Section 35C, application for a ride-share permit. Section 35D, grant of the ride-sharing permit, refusal or request for further information. Section 35E, inspection of a ride-sharing vehicle. Section 35F, persons prohibited from holding a ride-sharing permit. Section 35G, suspension or revocation of ride-sharing permit. Section 35H, registration with dispatching service. Section 35I, prohibition on providing a ride-sharing service, and Section 35J, appeal of a decision of the board. Clause 5 amends Section 37 of the Act, regulations, use of the public service vehicles, to provide for the imposition of a fine not exceeding $10,000 where a person commits an offense against regulations made under the Act. Clause 6 amends Section 37A of the Act, dispatching services, in subsection 1C by inserting new paragraph to be included, a digital network and any other systems approved by the board as approved equipment under that section. Clause 7 amends Section 1B of the Act to prescribe the fee for the issuance of a rideshare permit, and Clause 8 provides for the commencement of the Motor Car Ride-Sharing Amendment Bill 2026.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any other members who wish to speak to clauses 1 through 8? I recognize the member from constituency 22. Member, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Honorable Minister for his presentation of this bill in committee. My first questions are in Clause 2, over at the second page of the bill. The Clause 2 of the second page provides for a series of definitions, and we see definitions for rideshare permit and rideshare operator in the middle of the page. Rideshare operator is a person granted a license. Rideshare permit is the permit granted by the board. My question to the Honorable Minister is, how many are anticipated to be granted? Is it 200? Is it 2,000? I know that Minister Lightbourne said in the general debate it would be 150 permits, but I can't find that anywhere in the bill, so I'd be grateful to hear on that point. While I'm still in Clause 2, Madam Chair, I'm happy to put my second question on Clause 2 with your leave, and that is under the definition of ride-sharing service. That provides that the ride-sharing service begins when the rideshare operator accepts a request from a person via dispatching service and continues while the ride-sharing operator transports the passenger, and ends when the last passenger of each journey exit the ride-sharing vehicle. So my second question is this. So when the ride-sharing vehicle is not providing what we've just described with the passenger, how is that going to work? If it's driving around between jobs with the decals that are required elsewhere in the bill, is it still a rideshare operator at those points in time, or is it not because it's not providing a ride-sharing service? Those are my two questions in relation to Clause 2. I do have other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other persons who wish to speak to clauses 1 through 8? Not at this time. Minister, would you like to answer the questions, or member, do you wish to ask further questions? Okay, I
I'm
recognize
happy to
the
proceed
member.
through. I thought it might
Right.
be more assistance if he answered, but
Right.
I'm entirely in your hands, Madam.
Yes, you may ask your questions.
Thank you very much. Moving then to Clause 3 of the bill, I understand from the general debate that the chairman of the board identified in this bill, if I understood it correctly, to be the Public Service Vehicle Licensing Board constituted under the 1951 Primary Act, was in fact MP Tyrrell. I may have misheard that, but if that is the case, that MP Tyrrell chairs the board, could the minister kindly share with us whether or not the code of practice referred to in Clause 3 has been commenced, and whether or not the minister has seen a draft of the code of practice that the board is supposed to produce? Over the page at page 3 of the bill, I then have a question in relation to Clause 4, if you'd like me to continue on to Clause 4.
Yes, continue.
In Clause 4, we see, in relation to applications for ride-sharing permits, reference to terms and conditions specified by the board. Again, just as I had a question posed in relation to the code of practice, the same question applies to the terms and conditions. Have these been commenced by the board, and has the minister seen a draft of those? Further down, we see in relation to still at Clause 4, but at the bottom, at sub 4, so this is the inserted language for application, 35C, we see 1, we see 2, we see 3, and 4, it says this: a person making an application under subsection 2 is subject to A, criminal record check, and B, a traffic offense record check. And so what I'm wondering here in relation to that bit of the bill, if you have an outstanding traffic offense, are you therefore ineligible for ride share? And if that's not the case, why do we do the check if you're not ineligible owing to the traffic offense? Still at page 3 of the bill at the bottom, there's a section 35D that is inserted by Clause 4, and we see 35D2A. The board may, after considering an application under subsection 1, approve the application and grant the ride-sharing permit subject to such conditions as are specified by the board. My question in relation to those conditions is, who is the responsible entity for enforcing those conditions? And if it is the people at TCD that the minister talked about earlier, how are they to know about the conditions imposed by the board? Madam Chair, I'm happy to go on if you wish, or we can get a couple answers before I move on to
Yes,
page
I will
4.
see if the minister wishes to begin answering some of your questions. Minister, or would you prefer him? Okay, he prefers you continue. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm then moving on to page 4 of the bill. And then we see this is still continuing with the insertion of 35D, which started at page 3 of the bill and now turns over the page to page 4. And here we're talking about the rideshare permit being granted under subsection 2A, if you see that at 3 towards the top of the page. And then we see A, B, C, and D. Under D, it says that the permit, if granted, is, quote, non-transferable from a person to another person or from a private motor vehicle to another private motor vehicle. And I'd invite the Honorable Minister just to clarify my understanding, and I'll use Ms. Jones since we talked about her earlier. Does that mean if Ms. Jones has a license and Ms. Jones's Fiat has a license, that only Ms. Jones may drive the Fiat and the Fiat may only be driven by Ms. Jones? I think it does mean that, but I'd invite clarification. Moving then, Madam Chair, to paragraph 4, it says a ride-sharing permit shall be granted for a period as specified by the board. So in relation to the reference to period, is the minister able to suggest to us or share with this House how often that will be renewed? What is the period intended? Again, we heard during the debate, I believe it was Minister Rebane said that this was to be seasonal. I think some of the other speakers from across the aisle said that this would be seasonal. I can find nowhere in this bill a reference to it being seasonal, and so I'd be grateful if the minister could clarify where that seasonality arises in relation to that period. The next question still on this page is in relation to under 6, still on the same page below 4 where I just posed the question. After consultation with the board, the minister may, by order subject to the negative resolution procedure, prescribe the number of ride-sharing permits to be issued. Now, I've already asked the minister an earlier question, I think it was my first question, as to how many are envisaged, 200, 2,000. Is it the 150 mentioned by one of the honorable members across the aisle? The question here, though, is if it's to be determined by the minister, if the board, per this bill, is preparing the terms and conditions, and the board, per this bill, is preparing the code of practice, why is it that the number is going to be determined by the minister? That seems a bit illogical, that the experts who are dealing with all of this aren't the ones who would then determine what is needed by the market that the Premier so eloquently spoken about earlier. Over the page on page 5 of the bill, well, I mean, if it's market driven, let's let the people who are actually on the ground level decide, one would think. But no doubt the minister will explain the thinking behind that. The next question is on page 5 of the bill. And there's if you recall, Madam Chair, I earlier pointed out the point about if you have a traffic violation, that would be a traffic offense record check under clause 4. So in order to get the application, you have to have a traffic offense check. However, if you are then refused a request, that doesn't provide, I'm sorry, I'm on the page 5 at the top, so it's in relation to persons prohibited. So in order to get it, you get to have the background check of your traffic offenses. But you can be prohibited simply because of the convicted of a criminal offense. There's no reference to under 35F. There's A and there's B, but there's no C, which one would expect to see, that if you have a traffic offense record, having had it checked by the board, and if it actually exists, one would have thought that that would in fact then prohibit you, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Again, if you look down to the next section that's inserted at page 5, Madam Chair, 35G, we see again that under little Roman numeral 3, that if you're convicted of any traffic law or regulations, you can be suspended. So it doesn't really make sense that you can ban from applying, you can be suspended or revoked, but you can't actually be prohibited at the top of clause 5 of the page 5 of the bill. The next question is still at 35G in the middle of page 5, down at Roman numeral 6. Here we're talking about suspension or revocation, and at the top there you see the board may suspend a ride-sharing permit where, and it's Roman numeral 6, breaches of any other condition specified by the board. Now again, how do we know who is checking this? Is it the board? Is it some other party? And if it's some other party, how do they know the conditions that have been specified by the board? Just above that, at Roman numeral 5, we see that you can have a suspension or revocation if you are the subject of a written complaint made by a senior traffic officer. And I'm just curious where that is defined or what that's supposed to mean. What is a senior traffic officer as opposed to just a traffic officer? Why is there a distinction being made there in relation to the seniority of that person, and whether a junior traffic officer should also be able to issue something that would cause suspension or revocation? It would seem logical. Further down, we see then what's going to happen if you are suspended, right? So here is someone possibly with a criminal offense or with a traffic violation or is subject to a written complaint. Before we have suspension under this bill, at 35G, under 2, we have prior to suspending. And there are a whole host of things that are going to happen before you can be suspended. Under A, you have to give notice in writing to the ride-sharing permit holder that includes 1, a statement of the alleged breach, and 2, actions required to remedy the alleged breach where remediable. And then you have under B, where a breach is not remedied, under 2A2, allow the ride-sharing permit holder the opportunity to make representations before the board at the hearing, right? So first of all, you have to write to them and tell them what they're doing wrong. Then you have to show what the breach is. Then you have to give them time to remedy. And then you have to give the opportunity that they can come and make representations before the board at a hearing, all prior to suspending. So I'm just wondering whether or not that's an overly laborious approach to be taking to people who you might want to suspend or revoke for criminal activity or traffic law violations. It just does seem a little bit onerous. In terms of B, under 35G, this is 1B, again, a motor car used to provide ride-sharing services fails a vehicle inspection conducted by the department. That's another criteria for suspension or revocation. How often does the minister envisage that these vehicles will be inspected? I note that it says it's only when it's directed under Section 35E. So are those the only times there are going to be inspections, or will there be other times when there will be inspections? Next page is over to page 6. In the middle of page 6, we talk about the operation of a ride-sharing service in an efficient manner shall include, and we see A, maintaining the ride-share vehicle in a decent and comfortable condition, etc., and B, in relation to the ride-sharing operator, complying with the code of practice for ride-sharing operators. So again, a question as to how that's going to be checked, considering those are requirements for people to both be a ride-sharing person who's licensed and have a vehicle that's licensed. How is that, in fact, going to be checked? And I see the minister nodding his head. He's obviously contemplated these issues. Then we have at 35H1, where we see registration with the dispatching service, right? So it says this, 35H1, a person granted a ride-sharing permit under Section 35D, and a ride-sharing operator shall register. It's free of charge, but they shall register, it's mandatory, with every dispatching service. So if you want to be a ride-share operator in Bermuda, you've got to register with everybody. That's what I understand that. It's now a mandatory obligation to register with everyone, including the one that our Honorable Premier has declared his interest in. So everyone's going to have to register with all of them. Is that my correct understanding? That's my correct. I'm just it's gonna boost the numbers of registrations. One might think. And Madam Chairman, I realize the hour is late, so I'll try and be quick on my last two questions. This is at page 7 of the bill, and it's in relation to 35I for India, and it's one, a person shall not offer a ride-sharing service unless he, and there's a number of restrictions. And at the top of page 7, under D for David, one of the restrictions is that he's registered with every dispatching service. So I'm wondering, in relation to the point that was raised quite a lot, but not addressed with respect by the Honorable Minister during the general debate, if you're registering with every dispatch service, how is that going to work in terms of airport pickups and the inability to queue, which we heard mentioned in the general debate? My final question, Madam Chair, on the last page, page 8, I just heard from the Honorable Premier, what's that got to do with anything? I think a number of speakers, both on this side and on his side, identified one of the biggest problems is the fact is that people aren't getting picked up at the airport. So what has it got to do with it? It's actually got a very major thing to do. My next question, and if the Honorable Premier has questions on his own bill, he can certainly pose them. My last question is page 8, and this was at the ride-sharing permit amount, which we heard was $1,000. During the debate, we also heard reference to a $400 per annum fee, and I just would welcome clarity for that because it doesn't appear in the bill. And during the debate, it was also
Point of order,
suggested...
Madam Chair.
Your point of order, Minister.
The member is asking a litany of questions in committee, which is not uncommon. But the purpose of us going to committee is to do a number of things. Number one, make amendments to the bill, propose new clauses, or ask that clauses be removed. If this question is not leading to any of that, I ask your guidance as pertains to whether or not we're seeing an abuse of procedure.
The member is allowed to ask any questions on the line items. Continue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My last and final question. And I was just asking about the $400 per annum that was mentioned in the general debate. And finally, it was suggested by one of the debate people that there was a suggested
Point of order,
fee.
Madam Chair.
Your point of order.
To what provision in the standing order is your ruling
I don't have
pertaining
the
to?
standing order, but our custom and practice when we are in committee, as it pertains to the objectives in the committee, a member is able to deal with the line items of the related to the objectives, must state that line item and base his questions specifically to those line items.
Thank you, Madam